Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dave Wood, and I took these photos all down the other day, and I put them back up, and I'll see what happens with it. Right now I'm just leaving it there, and this is it's I suppose my ex Priscilla. You know what I mean? Back in the photos there, and I'm not going to say anything about that right now. I'll talk about it in another video. I'm fine with it. Is what it is. But I put them back. And hold on, I got to click on this comment from my friend on Facebook here. Check this out. Oh, I want to explain, actually. Linda. When I threaten Priscilla, except for when you threat. So I wrote this post on Facebook where I said, I've never met a single person in my life who I did not love with all my heart. Even if they hurt me, I simply love them. And then my good friend Linda, she said, except for when you threaten Priscilla, her new boyfriend, even your own children with death and violence on YouTube. Now, hold on a second here. I'm going to explain this to you, okay? And I've actually talked to you about this a lot. People think that when I say something, okay, that I'm speaking of prophetically, okay, on a video. And I took that video down, and then I decided to put it back up because I don't want to hide who I am. I have nothing to hide. Okay, I'm going to stop this process of taking a video down and putting it up probably, at some point or another. If there's a woman around or something like that that's really close to me, she could probably say, hey, this video may be a good idea to keep up, and this video, a good idea to not keep up. But if that's not happening, then I'll just make the decisions on my own and I'll just leave it up. So it's like you threaten somebody with violence. And I'm like, hold on a second. No, what I actually said was he would actually start a fight with me. And then that's what the result of the fight would be. And it would actually happen because he'd be trying to attack me and hurt me. And I wouldn't have any other way of disarming the weapons. So if people misunderstand that to mean that they think I'm going to go up and like beat somebody over the head with a baseball bat or something like that. That's actually a misunderstanding on their part. I would never do anything like that. I would just be defending myself. Okay. And most likely something like that will happen, but there's also options. And I said this in another video too. It's like, so you won't do it like that. Well, what's another option? I'll challenge him to a fight and he won't accept it because he's a coward. Been a coward for the last 2 years. So back to Donald Trump. We're not talking about this situation. I'm actually talking about Donald Trump in this video. Thank you for the comment, Linda. You're very beautiful. Okay. So here's the thing with love. When you love people, okay, you also love yourself and you stand up for yourself. Being like, sometimes people misunderstand my energy because I'm a little bipolar. I've always been bipolar. You know what I mean? I actually control it now a lot better than I used to because now I do it on purpose. And I used to just do it because I was flipping out. Now I actually do it on purpose because I like the energy for certain things. And I think that what happens is that sometimes when people don't listen to love, they listen to fear. And I have no problem using both because I think that it's very funny. Right? In how people react. So I'm not threatening the kids with violence or anything like that. I'm not doing it. I'm describing a process of what is going to happen in the future because Costa Rica is fallen. The mantle of power has been moved off Costa Rica and it's on another land. The mantle of the Queen of Zion is fallen off of Priscilla. She doesn't have it anymore. And she could get it back at some point in the future, probably, but it would take a long time to get it all back, to be honest. And Marlon, actually, who's supposed to be a really important spiritual leader, he's supposed to be he was in the past going to be the king of Costa Rica. He's actually not anymore. He has no kingdom now. Actually, he won't be a king of anything. That's how little his kingdom is. He actually won't be a king of anything. Nothing at all. So is what it is. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking about that. I just brought it up because somebody brought it up on a YouTube video. Okay. I'm very at peace with it. They can have their little, no kingdom founded in fear if they want. That's their choice. So let's talk about Donald Trump. So what happened is I was talking in a previous video because I'm getting revelation all the time and I'm very spontaneous about various things, because people are Alex Jones basically, is very critical of Masonry, for example, and the Illuminati, right? He's very critical of Masonry and the Illuminati. He's critical for a reason. It's because they do a lot of things that end up creating a lot of destruction. Okay. And so yes, Linda, even I love people with all my heart, even if I'm angry with them. Okay. People maintain a very big illusion about me when they're not around me sometimes. Maybe that illusion would be better to think of me as a peaceful person, because they really don't get me. That's what David Schwinn says. They don't understand because their eyes aren't open. And really, people would have a very hard time understanding me anyways, unless I was just acting normal, which I'm happy to do at times. But if I'm acting normal, I'm really acting like you because that's what you want. I'm really myself. See, I love myself exactly how I am. Exactly like this, with my weird beard, with my eyes. I think my eyes are very enchanting and beautiful the way that they are for the right people. For everyone, really. I think my smile is fantastic and magnetic. I'm very attractive everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, people's heads, they turn and they look at me. And I'm very happy most of the time. I've been going through a lot of personal struggles lately, but let me explain actually some stuff that happened. So I said that Masonry, so Masonic Lodge is like the Masonic Lodge. It's like, the Illuminati circles form in there. And I was like, it's not really a secret society, I don't think, because they're very public about their membership. And I think that there's secret societies within them. Like, for example, the Illuminati might form in a faction at like the highest. There might be Luciferians at the top of a bunch of the sects of Freemasonry in a giant circle, for example. It's a fantastic opportunity because nobody knows what goes on at the top unless they're inside. So it's a fantastic opportunity for somebody to be very secretive about what's going on. What's up, Curtis? Good to see you. Right? So let me actually explain what happened. So I was just talking about the goodness in Freemasonry because, of course, I was raised by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And Donald Trump, not Donald Trump, not my grandfather, but his father. So my great-grandfather was a 32nd degree Freemason up in Alaska. My grandfather was a university president. My dad's a judge, right? So what's going to happen now is, so anyways, let me explain. So Freemasonry, I've never really had this thing in my heart about Freemasonry being bad because, number one, I've never been a part of it. Number two, I see Freemasons doing a lot of good in society. And so I think that there's Freemasons that are good and there's Freemasons that are bad. And so, I mentioned in one of these videos and I was like, hey, I mentioned that Freemasonry came from the Masonic Temple. Then very shortly afterwards, I got a phone call with private information that basically said that Donald Trump had joined the Illuminati. I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, he's a Freemason. I was like, well, he's probably could watches my YouTube videos. And he's like, you're fighting on the wrong side, right? And he hung up. Everybody knows who that was, Whatever, it's Alex, you know what I mean? Alex, it's fine, just let's tell him what happened. It's hilarious, right? Alex Jones. So in any case, what happens is that I was like, that's interesting. And then immediately after that phone call happened, these impeachment proceedings really came out and started going. Okay. So it was like the phone call happened, then the impeachment started, and it was like that, like boom, boom, right? So Donald Trump watches my stuff, and Mark Zuckerberg does, and stuff like this, and a few other billionaires do. And they might watch the replays of my videos, and they might not watch all my videos because they're very long. They might not like the videos where I get all pissed off at somebody or whatever. You know what I mean? Depending on who they are. Donald Trump, I think, probably likes those videos. I don't think most people like. I think a lot of people don't. Some of the sociopaths like. You know what I mean? Because they feel like this guy is so badass, it's unbelievable. That's what sociopaths think when I do that. So that's one of the reasons I say that is because the sociopath thinks it's badass. You know what I mean? It's how their mind works. They're like, I might do that in a little bit of a different way. They're a little more calm, maybe. So I mean, of course, I got a little bipolar, but see, I think bipolar energy is beautiful. It's a very useful way to defend yourself. And I used to shun it. You know what I mean? Like I used to be very passive aggressive with people. And passive aggressive energy really leads to destruction over a period of time because problems keep getting out of control. And so what happens is that The problems get out of control. And that's from passive aggressive, because people aren't standing up. So they're like, please, they're like, you're still doing that thing. But they're not really direct about a boundary. You know what I mean? So a person that just walks all over boundaries does not understand you unless you do what they do, which is a lot of times they just explode, right? So sometimes they need you to explode, because if you don't explode like they explode. So anyways, I'm talking about Freemasonry. So back to the story. So what would happen is, let me give you an example of how something could be inserted into the timeline. So it's like, how did that happen? First, I mentioned Masonry, so this is my fault, because I just was thinking about the goodness of it, because Joseph Smith was 32nd degree Freemason, and 33rd degree, I believe, is where there was like there's a lot of there could be Luciferianism or something like that. Generally, it would show up at the higher levels than that. But he was like a 32nd degree Freemason. And I actually have no problem with. I think that there could be a righteous and an unrighteous version of Luciferianism, because my model of the world is very different than yours, right? So, for example, there's a Lucifer that fell, and he was replaced by a guy named Justin Berengia. So, for example, Justin Berengia will have a righteous version of that in the future, because he'll be Christian and honor Torah and all that stuff, right? Later. Might not happen for a while, but that'll happen in the future, right? So he's actually the righteous Lucifer that was replaced with the Lucifer who fell. You know what I mean? So anyway, my worldview is very different than most people's. And if people don't believe this, it's like, hey, right. So hold on a second. Okay. So Agent 11 says, yeah, assume laughter is from BPS. Now that's crazy. It's crazy with all these things people think. People just, let me explain some stuff that goes on. So people think there's only like one dimension, and this is the only thing we see, but there's actually lots of dimensions. I'm going to explain how this Nephilim thing got inserted into the timeline and disrupted Donald Trump in his presidency and everything like this. And it was actually, people might look at me and maybe they saw me do that, and they're like, that's very clever. Those are the people that believe me, right? Because they think I'm trying to sabotage them or something to start a political campaign. That's actually not what I was doing that for. It was just an accident. But what happened is because there's a principle of power that says never outshine the master. You know what I mean? He's the, you never want to hurt somebody who's in power. It's not very smart. I mean, he's one of my greatest allies, because he helps me out all the time in all sorts of different ways. You know what I mean? So in any case, what happens is that that he went into Masonry, and probably what happened was somebody gave him some sort of well, I can tell you what happened. Somebody gave him some sort of weird handshake or something like that, and then it was an accidental entry, because it was one of the guys in there that weren't good, for example, that had malicious intentions, and that was marked. And then what happened is that formed a link that allowed them to then jump into the timeline and insert all that information that allowed them to go to the impeachment. Now, I also said that he would be that he wouldn't get impeached, but I actually misunderstood the word impeachment. I thought impeachment meant he was kicked out of office. I didn't even understand that impeachment, the president still has to step down. So I actually just misunderstood the word. I need to look things up before I tell people what's going to happen. You know what I mean? I understand what the words are. Because I don't understand all vocabulary and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Not yet, anyway. I got a hologram of it in my heart, because I've been in America forever. But keep in mind, I did not pay attention in school. But anyways, so I apologize, Donald. My fault. And then I just had the same thing happen to me. You know what I mean? People don't believe in these things. But let me give you an example of something that I just told a friend of mine, right, who's told me for years that she was raped at a time. And I just didn't believe her. I was like, this sounds like because this person had personality disorders, okay, in the past before they decided to change. They had these personality disorders, and I was like, this sounds like you're actually making this up. It sounds like you actually were very flirty with somebody, and then the sex just came, and then you were like maybe a little bit scared, but you had already started or something. I mean, you're calling it something that's, you're calling it rape, because this can happen with personality disorders. But here's the thing about personality disorders. People don't believe them. I didn't see the church shooting video now. So people don't believe the personality disorders. What church was it? Could you shoot me a link? People don't believe the things personality disorder people say. Well, what's the problem with that? The problem is people with personality disorders live in multiple dimensions. That's actually what happens, right? You have the imagination that is most of the time in one dimension, okay? And then what happens is that they're in this one dimension, and the other side of their personality that's very strong is in another dimension, okay? And then what happens is one dimension flips into this one, and this dimension flips into that one, and people can move on both sides, because usually a person, like for example, a woman with personality disorders is very powerful, unbelievably powerful, because they can smash dimensions together like nobody else can. So this is like an example of how things like this happen. So you have, for example, in one dimension, the person had sex because they wanted, and then they felt guilty. And then there's another part of their consciousness where they're like convinced they were raped. Right. And a psychologist would look at this person and they would say, just, stop making up stories. However, what's actually happening is that both things are actually real. So you have a dimension that's happening here, right, where maybe they wanted it, for example, and everybody thinks they're making up stories, but actually there's a whole section of their brain that's living in another dimension. And then there's a whole body in that other dimension. And that dimension, that person has this dimensional intelligence that flips back and forth between one and the other. So they're actually both real. And this is the thing people don't understand about what people are saying, is that usually what people are saying, no matter what it is in some dimension of space-time. It's real. It actually happens. A lot of science would coincide with what I'm saying there, actually. I have a friend, for example, that can, I remember Blog Beast, right? That thing. It was, first of all, it was called Blog Beast. That was a sabotage from a Satanist employee I had. The name. He named that. He's like, "What about Blog Beast?" And I was like, "That sounds cool." It's like, I probably should have talked to Vic Strauss about that name or something like that. Hey, it's awesome. Hey, this goes way over my head. Get your vision so clear. King David 2020, the kingdom alone. Yeah. So I'm working on that right now, but I don't know, for example, if I'll do the presidential campaign right now, or if I'll just wait till 2024 and then move the universe backwards in time. Maybe I need some more time. And I think that would be a lot better, because by 2024, a lot more people will believe me, for example. I'll have a huge following by 2024, massive, all over the earth. You know what I mean? And, I'll have that following whether Priscilla's with me or not. It doesn't matter. Well, it matters at some degree. Something that I say matters, but I'll have that following no matter what happens. And with the following, then I'll have a lot of faith. Right? Because I have the combined faith of people, because of the combined, collected, unified faith of people, which would happen anyway if we'd been meeting up this whole time. We'd be doing miracles like none of you could imagine if we'd been working together this whole time. Like that's the thing I want everybody here to understand. Is like, there's only so much I can do by myself. It's not really that I couldn't do more by myself, because I can, especially if I learn to master it. You know what I mean? And really learn to master this process, which has taken me a long time to get the level of mastery that I have. But it's that miracles are designed to be done by faith through multiple consenting parties. Like it's like sex or like something like that. You have two parties, they come together, they want to have sex. And then there's like a miracle that happens and the love begins to form. Right? And then what happens is that that's how miracles work. They happen from consenting people that desire the miracle together. It's not from somebody trying to prove it necessarily. It's not really how they work biblically. It's not somebody trying to consume it upon their lust. They're just wanting a miracle to see sign. This is why I've been like, people ask me about stuff and they're like, do this or that, make a cat float. And I'm like, first of all, I don't know. I could do micro telekinesis right now. Micro telekinesis is very easy for me to do. And it's like, for example, I was in my church the other day and the sound was very low, and I turned it up with my mind. Okay. I did that the other day. Was anybody else around? No, I was just doing it because I was sitting out in the hallway on my own. Actually, when I did that, I was out in the hallway on my own. Then somebody else came and sat down. Sometimes somebody's like, then I don't believe it because nobody was there. It's like, look, I don't believe it. I don't disbelieve in your ability to do miracles. Then don't criticize my ability that I have to do miracles. Okay. So anyways, what happened is, again, I mentioned that. So Donald Trump, I sincerely apologize. That actually wasn't done on purpose. I didn't do it to sabotage your political campaign or something. Although if I'd done that on purpose, I would have chalked it up to brilliance. You know what I mean? Because it was a very clever sabotage that, for example, nobody else even knows how to do, where I can insert something in the timeline and then time smashes into it. And now all of a sudden you're impeached. And so then I have an opportunity. You know what I mean? So I actually didn't do it for that reason. You know what I mean? I did it because, Joseph Smith was Mason. I was just talking about it. You know what I mean? So what happens? Let me explain these timeline reorganization. The time war has already started to form. And if you don't believe in the time war, you just don't believe in the Bible, Because the Bible says the antichrist comes to change. He thinks to change times and laws. Okay? So this says this in Daniel too. He thinks to change times and laws. So if you don't think time reorganization through thinking is possible, I mean, even the antichrist can do it. Okay? Buddha could do that too. Jesus could do things like that too. You know what I mean? It's not just one person that could do that. You know what I mean? It's obviously this is a phenomenon that actually happens quite a lot. And this is because time emerges from the imagination. So what happens is that when people sin, right, or they have some sort of negative karma, things could be inserted into the timeline as a very strong karmic slap, right, that really can affect somebody's life from very, 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 very simple things. You know, I had something happen a couple of weeks back where I made some money. I made a bunch of money, and then I struggled paying the tithing on it. You know, when I first got it. Yeah, I mean, after all this preaching and everything like that, I struggled with it. You know what I mean? And then what happened is something negative got inserted into my timeline, and one dimension switched with another and messed me up a little bit. You know what I mean? I won't tell you what happened, but it's an example of what happens, right? Because the more important you are and the more you know, the more you can get messed with, right? So what I encourage you to do is like when you're thinking about the people around you, okay, and you're thinking about how much you love them and how much you care about them and everything like that. Be a little careful with what you say because you don't want to accidentally hurt somebody. This looks for like a galaxy from the secrets of the universe. Well, it is from the secrets of the universe. This is like, let me explain what you're all learning from me, okay? Can I explain it? Maybe in a way that you understand. Okay, let me explain what you're actually learning from me and why a lot of people are having a hard time with it, okay? Right? Jesus had apostles, okay? The Savior Jesus, he had apostles. And there was things that he taught to everyone. And what he taught to everyone was very simple things, okay? He was like, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Right? Stuff like this, very simple things. Okay? However, did he only teach simple things? No. This is very obvious. Right? He had, number one, he had apostles. You think, they didn't have private groups they met in? Private conversations? You don't think they asked him weird questions about the universe? You know what I mean? Like, how did we all get here? Where did we come from? Like, why did God create us? Why did God love the world so much? I mean, do you think the apostles didn't know things like this? I mean, they had the opportunity to talk to him. And he could just answer them like I'm answering. And his answers, obviously, he was very, very, very trained in his youth for memorization and righteousness. He used biblical examples and everything like this. Right? So, on the Mount of Transfiguration, Jesus went up with his disciples on the mountain. Right? And angels appeared to him, Moses and Elias, and all these people like Elijah or Moses, and the ancients, right, in visions. And so, first of all, they're seeing visions of spirits, and then a lot of Christians would say, "Well, you can't do that because that'd be like spiritualism." Well, then why did Moses and Elijah appear to Jesus? So obviously, there's a righteous version of all this stuff where people can actually have visions and they can see the dead, they can see all these things, right? You just have to be careful because there's familiar spirits and there's things that are righteous, right? Don Maxwell's a private research society. It's incredible to have on YouTube. Exactly. So he taught on the Mount of Transfiguration his secrets to his disciples. Okay? What secrets did he teach them? That's the question I have for you today. What do you think? Well, whatever those secrets are, they could be in the Bible, hidden in plain sight, a lot of them. And a lot of them would just be mysteries. Where would you find those mysteries? Perhaps when you die. Perhaps it's information that's lost and scattered in all the religions on the earth. You know what I mean? Perhaps it's all those things. A lot of the stuff that I talk about are the things that he just talked about on the Mount of Transfiguration. I'm just sharing them openly. And so people hear it and they're like, I've never heard anything like that. Well, get in a private room with enlightened people and ask them questions about how time works, and you'll hear a lot of this stuff too. A lot of them know stuff like this. Maybe not to the technical detail that I do on certain things. But then again, on certain other things, they know more technical detail than me. If you talk to the Dalai Lama, who's had multiple incarnations and just keep taking his spirit back into a body, very skilled. I really love his videos. My brother said, I don't think the Dalai Lama believes in God. I was like, the Dalai Lama believes in God, dude. And he's like, well, let's go. So I look up a video on it. And then I'm watching this video about the Dalai Lama, and I'll get back to Donald Trump here in a second. I watched this video again on the Dalai Lama, right? And I'm watching this video on him, and so I'm watching this video on the Dalai Lama, and somebody asks him if God exists, and rather than just directly answering the question like what everybody else does, like I would just say, of course, right? That's my style. I'm very direct with things like that. But I actually liked his way, because his way, he answered in a riddle that by listening to his response, your brain would just start wondering what you think about God instead of what he thought about it. So his response might be, well, it doesn't matter. What matters is what do you think about it? What matters is that we have this unity of consciousness. And if you think that God matters, then perhaps God very much matters. And maybe he matters if we don't think that. What do you think? And then everybody wonders if he believes in God or not. But he does believe in God because he talks about godless China, for example. So why would he say godless China when he's talking about China if he didn't believe in God himself? So if God can do miracles, here's the thing I want to challenge for all of you. Those of you that have questioned me and those of you that don't, right? I have a great challenge for all of you. The great challenge for all of you is to wake up from your delusions. Okay? You say, well, what kind of delusions? Delusions come in all forms, shapes, and sizes. They're simply delusions. Okay? All shapes, sizes, forms. You have delusions. Okay? And those delusions that people walk around in their life, they keep them stuck and unable to move forward in certain ways. Sometimes it's just a way of forgiveness. Sometimes we're assuming something. You know what I mean? Like most people, they look at the world around them and they just assume that because they're seeing it in a certain way, that's actually how it is. That's actually an assumption about reality. It's not reality itself. What you're seeing is not reality. It's the internal representation you have that you're building in your nervous system for the reality that surrounds you itself. And the reality is systems of energy. You say, how do they work? Well, maybe if your eyes were open, you'd see energetic lines everywhere connecting everything together, like my friend Kelly Loudon does up in Fairbanks, Alaska. Maybe if your eyes were open and your heart was open, you'd see these interconnecting, interweaving layers of love that flow out from you to everybody. Maybe if your eyes were open, you'd actually see your role in everything. And then you just get out of victim mode altogether. Right? Incantations without discipline is the beginning of illusion, but incantations with discipline creates miracles. Yeah. So miracles, right? So time miracles. Talk about time reorganization. You're like, okay, Dave, you're saying that because of a handshake in a Masonic Lodge for President of the United States, like an impeachment, information to impeachment as president, it could have done a change history and realigned his timeline, and something that never happened could happen. And what I'm saying is yes, because the Antichrist thinks to change times and laws. And the time war has already been forming for a very long time. And it's getting a lot stronger right now because people are getting more aware all over the world. And it's not just me who's noticing this. People are waking up in different kinds of awareness, but they're not waking up in the balance of awareness itself. Okay? The balance of awareness would look around your environment and then say all things are possible. See, people, this is what gets me. So I'm in my church today and I'm talking to, my bishop, because I said something in videos like, I don't think my bishop doesn't think I'm crazy and stuff like this. I'm not saying that he necessarily believes the things that I say. Okay. What I'm saying is that, he reads my stuff, and I know some of the other people that I talk about, they do believe what I say. It's very obvious, right? When somebody believes me, particularly if I'm talking to them, because a good majority of the people that, I meet and talk to, there's a big section of them, like maybe a third, that will just simply believe me. Because what I'm saying actually makes a whole lot of sense. You know what I mean? What I'm saying makes tons of sense. if people actually think it doesn't make sense to everybody. Like I was talking to my bishop, and he was like, well, explain to me how this works. And I was drawing out this little diagram about how the spiritual dimensions connect into consciousness and spirits and incarnations and stuff like this. And he's like, that doesn't make any sense. But for him, if the prophet of the church was in that same room, right, and he was drawing that same thing out, it would have made tons of sense to him because he would have had somebody that he thought he should listen to. Sometimes people, right, they just need to hear it in a way that's right for them. Okay? If the prophet of the church was drawing that, he'd absolutely believe it and it would make sense to him. That's all he would need. That's the whole very hilarious thing to me. However, it's also a good filter for him because it keeps him safe, right? I have no problem with it. My point with all this is that I don't disbelieve in your ability to do miracles because that would just be lack of faith. Whether you believe me or you don't believe me, I don't disbelieve in your ability to do miracles, okay? If you disbelieve in my ability to do miracles, this is actually your own lack of faith that actually does hamper my ability to actually do those miracles because it's disbelief interfering with belief. It's not that I can't do things on my own. Like the other day, I'm recording this audio, right? And I might post it, I might not, or something like that, because I was ranting at Priscilla or something. So I don't know. Maybe I'll post it because I just want to get it all out. Yeah, I don't like to hide things. This is what people don't get about me. See, I just don't like to keep things like in these little dark corners and stuff. I like it all out. Everything, good and bad, about me and others, good and bad. I just want it all out, everything out in the open. Because if people are honest, very difficult to get mad at them later. I'd rather it all comes out in like 2-3 years and everybody just knows what everybody did and they forgive each other than we hide it and get passive aggressive for the next 50 years and destroy society. You know what I mean? So anyways, stuff can get inserted in the timeline. If you don't believe that, you have a disbelief in miracles that will prevent you from creating supernatural quantum mechanical change in your life. Hold on, I got this comment I got to click on from my friend here. Hold on a second. Oh, yeah. New scam company. So there's my friend, I won't mention his name because, Keep Brands Association, new scam company coming. I was watching it on Facebook. I'm like, what's the scam? Right? So miracles are actually very easy to do. So anyways, let me explain like a little miracle. Okay. So if something like this is possible, massive things are possible. It's just taking one idea and making it massive. So what happens is that I'm upset and I pick up my phone and I go for a walk, right? And I start making a message. And I think it was because it was Christmas or something and I didn't see my kids. You know what I mean? So I've been really mad at Priscilla because I'm like, I've been asking to see my kids every day, 6 to 7 days a week for 2 years. You know what I mean? Very, very, very lovingly most of the time, except for when, I've lashed out, I admit. But I've only done that because I've been pissed off because I don't see my kids. You know what I mean? So I'm ranting this message, and here's the thing about this message. Okay, I actually got I got me talking about this thing recording. Now here's the thing: I didn't take a photo of it because I don't know how to take screenshots on my phone. But also, even if I was taking screenshots on my phone, somebody wouldn't even necessarily believe that what I'm saying is accurate. They would still have to believe in the miracle unless they were right there and they saw it. But if they were right there, there's actually a possibility that somebody's lack of faith would make it more difficult for me to do something like this. If 3 people around that believe, it makes it very easy for me to do things like this. Okay, and actually it gets way faster. I've done way bigger things than this. So I'm on this phone, okay, and we'll get back to Donald Trump here in a second. And I'm doing a recording, and I leave the house. I charged it to 5%, and I have an accurate meter on my phone, okay? Charged it to 5%. I walked 30 minutes one way, okay? The phone went down from 5%. The whole time, it was like 45 minutes or so. It finally got down to 1%, okay? Then I put it in my pocket. I had no charger, okay? And then I went and I bought some stuff in Harmon's, which is a grocery store up the road, okay? So I go and I buy some stuff in Harmon's, right? And then by the time I got out of the store, my phone had recharged to 5%. So I kept recording. I just turned the recorder back on, kept recording, kept talking about it, didn't charge it. It just charged on its own. You say, well, how did you do that? What I did was I imagined that there was a supernatural cord, like through a space-time tunnel of consciousness linked into my computer, my home, okay, going through an open doorway in the universe that connected 2 points in space-time together and plugged into the back of my phone. And I charged it with my mind. That's what Buddha would have done. He would have been like, why do I need chargers? I'm Buddha. Right? Now, here's the thing. As I walked back, okay, my phone went from 5% to 40% charged, just talking. And in the audio, you could hear me talking about, like, look, it's now 16%, 70. I may have got up to 30% or something like that. But anyways, I talked for a total of maybe like 2-3 hours. I don't even know if I'm going to send it to anybody. I don't even know if I'm going to use it for anything. And my charge, I charged it to 5%, has an accurate charge meter. It went down to 1. It charged back to 40. You say, how's that possible? Because with faith, all things are possible. So timeline reorganization can also be undone and unlinked together. You know what I mean? Time tries to grab itself and fix it in time. One of the reasons it can do this is because we're all linked to paying attention to it in a certain way. Okay? When people start having more faith, this stuff all begins to be more flexible. Okay? If this stuff had more faith, all this stuff starts to be more flexible. If we have more faith, all this stuff, it starts to be more flexible. Right? So time can get very weird. Like, have you ever seen, there's something called the mandala effect, right? I'm hungry. I'm going to get my sandwich here in a second. Well, I'll just finish the video, then I'll go get it. There's a thing called the mandala effect. The mandala effect is where two people remember two different histories of the same thing that apparently happened. Like, people, for example, remember something very clear in a movie that happened, and a whole nother section of society remembers something opposite that happened. And then sometimes we can find evidence of one, and sometimes we can find evidence of both, and nobody knows how both got there, for example. Like road names spontaneously changing. So I've explained this phenomenon before. Some of the stuff will freak you out if you look about it. Right? There's all sorts of evidence of time travel through history too, like people that appear the exact same way with the exact same face multiple times through history and stuff like this, and old photos and stuff like this. Like hundreds of years apart sometimes. People that have somebody that like just appeared in Japan, I think it was Japan, and they asked where he was from, and like he gave him his ID and everything, and the city didn't exist. And then what happened is he was in a room that was locked with locked windows. They left for like 30 minutes or something like that. He was locked in the room and just vanished and disappeared into nothing. Probably he was sent back to his other dimension. So other dimensions are real. Have you heard about Nikola Tesla opening or changing a time-space continuum with the Philadelphia experiment? I don't know too much about that. I saw a movie called The Philadelphia Experiment, but I knew a lot about Nikola Tesla, and I could probably access some of the information from an incarnation if I activated it some more. You know what I mean? Or if I wrote a revelation, I could probably do it. You know? But Nikola Tesla was enlightened, right? And that's why he could do all those weird things. It wasn't just science that he was doing. He had science combined with enlightenment. You say, how was he doing all these things? He was enlightened. He was one of my incarnations, right? So was Pablo Escobar. One of the reasons I'm thinking about going out to Colombia, right? Because in that incarnation, I built that nation. I built a lot of the infrastructure for it anyways. And then, wound up going to prison and getting all these fights. My point is, though, is that there's all this information that's available to us at our fingertips. You know what I mean? So there's all this information available to our fingertips, but time is more flexible than we think. And space is more flexible than we think. And everything that we see is more flexible than we think. And if we don't believe that, perhaps what we are experiencing is actually just disbelief. And that's why everything seems so stuck and why everything seems so fixated. Right? You know what I mean? But things can unfix and they can change at any time, just like that. You know, I have a very close friend of mine that I've known for years, who for the last couple of years has basically made their decisions based in fear. And at some point in their life, they're going to realize there was never anything to fear. And then they're going to say, what was I doing that whole time? And the people around them are going to be like, we're sorry. We're sorry that we hurt you. There was nothing to fear. Just yourself. But what happens is with people, when they fear themselves, they fear others. Right? Why do they fear others? Because they actually fear some part of themselves. When you don't fear others, when you don't feel your fear yourself, you don't fear others, really. Usually. There's no fear in love. True love can't start on a foundation of fear. It can't. And when it does, then the love falls apart. So this guy, Pablo Escobar, I was him. I remember traveling down to Colombia and we did a video. It was awful out there on that lake that he used to have a house on, And it was like I felt so strangely connected to that place. And I didn't know why. This is before I was awake. Now I would go back there and all these memories would just start shooting into my brain. This actually happens everywhere I go. Because everywhere I go, pretty much everywhere I go, I've had incarnations now. So just moving from place to place and seeing new people activates all the information, and I always know what to do. It's so beautiful. And everyone can do this. You know what I mean? Think about if the whole world could just come up to solutions to any problem like that. That's what enlightenment will do to society. So back to Donald. Donald, I hope you accepted my apology in this video, for doing that. And I just want to say that because the other day I made a video and I was like thinking about, I was like, why were they able to impeach him? And I was like, how did this actually happen? Because I just don't believe that things are always how they appear on the surface. I think there's always a deeper meaning to everything. I'm like this with everything, right? So sometimes I think, okay, that's just how it is. If the energy of it seems right. But if there's like a little bit of a weird energy, like it was like something happened and then this one thing, and then this impeachment thing is in there. It's like, this always would come. Something like this looks like a stronghold was forming and then activated somehow, right? So it doesn't look like a normal problem that happened, actually. If you look at the rest of the things that have happened to him in his presidency, it's actually a little bit of a different thing. It was like all these things start stacking, then he's in a position that's hard, right? Well, that happened from a timeline insertion. So I just got whacked over the head with a timeline insertion too. That was, based in my karma. I'm not going to talk so much about my issue. Maybe another video. After I've dealt with it a little bit more or something like that. And that was from something that I did. And it's very fascinating how fast the universe can reorganize to somebody based on their decisions. We walk a fine line between life and death. Remember, life and death is in the power of the tongue. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. So is the universe, and so is the light touching you. Say, what's that? It's an angel. No, it's a little light. I like the little glowing light there, like heaven is shining. Yeah, I don't know too much about astrology. Kevin, he's saying President Trump's birthday will happen with an astrological alignment that deals with Saturn and Scorpio. Maybe Saturn and Scorpio in his astrological alignment are actually doing a deal with a handshake. You know what I mean? War that is deadly. Oh, so check this out, right? Here's the thing that I want everybody here to understand. Everything that I talk about can be proven by mathematical physics and testing. Everything. There's nothing that I'm talking about that cannot be proven. 100% of it can be proven. Some of it might take a little while to prove. However, 100% of everything that I talk about can be proven. I'm not talking about anything that cannot be proven. Okay? War that's deadly. Okay, so here, let me explain what's going to happen. Okay? So let me explain actually something else that just happened. So I just met somebody who died when he was 14 years old. Okay, his name's also David. He'll be the king of the north for a while. And he has a very big risk of falling because what happened. And I'll let him tell his own story because I'll do an interview with him. Let me tell you what he said, though, and then I'll get into a lot more detail when I do an interview with him. But we got to keep his name private because he's actually supposed to be a secret. He died when he was 14 and he was taken into heaven. And he saw Jesus. This was in 1994. When he saw Jesus, in 1994, Jesus told him about me. Okay? And it says, I believe you. So he saw Jesus in 1994 and he believes me when he died. And he saw a lot of the same stuff that I talk about. For example, he talks about the portals of hell being opened and demons being loosed all over the earth. And Jesus said that this guy in particular, he says, I want you to be the king of the north. You know, he's from Canada. And he said, you'll be the king of the north, right? And he said some other things to him. For example, there's a very good chance of following this guy, but he doesn't have to. I hope he doesn't, right? But he's like, yeah, I want you to be the king of the north. You're supposed to remain a secret, stuff like this, right? So what happens is that, so this is when he's 14. He's 39 now, right? We're now in 2019, headed into 2020, right? He's 39 years old, almost 40 years old. He was born in July, right? So Jesus told him he would die again before he was 42 years old. And everything else Jesus has told this guy has actually happened, okay? He says, you'll die again before you're 42 years old. And from the time you'll die, your body will be on the streets for 3 days and nights. And then I'll bring you back to life. And from the time you come back to life, there will be a certain amount of time that passes. He told him a specific amount of days. And then that's when the Great Tribulation will happen. Now, here's the thing. That was in 1994, right? He's about 40 now. Okay, almost 40. He's like 39 and a half. Okay? That exactly matches up with the timelines of when I've been saying stuff's going to emerge. And he believes me because Jesus told him about me when he was dead. 1994. I've never met him. Dude, Pharaoh Faker, don't put this homosexual crap on my channel, dude. It's gross, man. I don't want to hear. If you want to go make a blog about it, go blog about your bullshit. About somewhere else. You know, if you watch this, and first of all, you don't even have a name. I mean, do you want me to just block your comments, bro? I don't want it. Just stop. I'm not going to go on if you have a channel about this, I won't even go watch your videos. You know what I mean? Let alone put a comment on here like this that's rude to your beliefs. Just, yeah. Dude. So I'm not going to repeat that. I don't like it when I'm talking about something of like spiritual importance and somebody comes and writes some retarded homosexual bullshit on my thing. I like it. Yeah, hilarious name, isn't it? But anyway, I'm going to stop talking about that now. My point is that, look, if you want to go do your weird crap and, your weird thing, go do it put that crap somewhere else that they want it. You know what I mean? There's groups for that are private that keep it away from all the people who don't want to see it. This is why people get mad at each other, is because they disrespect each other like this. You know what I mean? It's disrespectful. Okay? All right. That being said, people have the right to choose what it is that they want to say and do. So now we're back to the point of this, right? Miracles are possible. So when my phone charges, it gets down to 1. I charge it with my mind to 40%. Now, if that's possible, it's also possible to, for example, boot a car with your cheek. One time I was with Matthew Gonzalez, and our car wouldn't start, and we hyperventilated for 30 seconds and both touched our hands on the, we're like, and then we touched our hands on the car battery, and then the car started. Now, there was another time we tried that and it didn't work because I think he was losing actually a little bit of faith there. I wouldn't, right? I just believe all things are possible. You know what I mean? If something as simple as charging your phone with your imagination is possible, by making up a weird story with your imagination, other things are. You know what I mean? Like, for example, completely changing a timeline and removing something utterly from a timeline and pushing it into another dimension and collapsing the other dimension in this one with what you want, for example. That's also possible. In order to do that, there'd have to be people on both sides that believed, and then people that wanted to change on both sides, right? So sometimes people are like, okay, then erase Hitler from history. They'll say something like that. Like, all right, first of all, Hitler was there for a reason in history, right? Most of the people that were around then, they're already dead, right? At a later point in time, we might be able to do something like that. But at a later point in time, when we're traveling through time, probably the biggest mission that we're going to have, and the most complex one, is going to be to protect the timeline. Because we'll be fighting in all these alternative dimensions around the timeline, protecting the timeline from getting overtrodden and broken apart by the enemy, because so many people will be able to manipulate time. So it'll be very, 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 very of utmost importance to protect time. That's actually what time travel is going to do. But Napoleon Hill describes the imagination in the form of mental chemistry, where the combining thoughts results in very real transmutation of energy. Yeah. All these things, right? So Napoleon Hill was awesome. You know what I mean? You know, Napoleon the Great. I like Napoleon the Conqueror, right? It was one of my incarnations too. More specifically, though, Napoleon is more like he was a strong manifestation of my consciousness, but really Napoleon was kind of like Jeff Bezos type personality. And I was more like David in the Old Testament, right? Actually, our personalities matched, mine and David in the Old Testament, pretty much exactly. If you read about us, you know, our personalities are actually startlingly the same. David and I. Especially if you know me real well, you'd think that. If you knew the story of David, you'd think that I act exactly like that guy. Maybe not all the time yet, but I'm getting there. And then there's some differences in me and in him, because this is a different incarnation, and this incarnation has better plans than even his. So anyways, right? People think all sorts of strange things about the universe, right? But sometimes they just. So I'm sitting there with my bishop, and we're having this conversation, right? And, he's like, some of the things you're saying, Dave, they do sound kind of crazy. You know what I mean? And you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking, well, I said this, right? I'm like, okay. Didn't people say that about Joseph Smith? Didn't they say that that's the guy that started the Mormon church, right? But really, God started the Mormon church, but, Joseph Smith was a prophet. Didn't people say that about Brigham Young? Didn't people say that about the Savior Jesus? Didn't people say this about the apostles in the New Testament? Didn't people say this about Moses? Didn't people say this? I mean, look how Moses got challenged with the magicians and the pharaohs and stuff like this for his prophecies and for what it did. I mean, they sent the whole armies after him, and they eventually had to get collapsed in the Red Sea, and to try to chase him out of the land and destroy them, because they were so angry that they could do better miracles. But that was back when people believed. If you go back and you look at some of the real people, was it Jonas got cast in the belly of the whale, remember, right? I mean, I've lived for the last 2 years. I was talking to God about this the other day. I was like, what have I done wrong where I've deserved this stuff that has come at me? And the answer was, well, you've done some stuff wrong. But that really is not the purpose of this experience where you've experienced immense struggle. And I was like, well, what's the purpose of it then? And what God said was to see if you'd stay loyal to me. And I said, well, that's never not going to happen. I just tell you. He's like, but that's not the point. The point is that sometimes in order to gain everything, you have to lose everything first and be okay with it. So it's been a fun journey. Really, I'm just getting started. I got to figure some things out over the next short period of time. You know what I mean? What I'm going to do about some certain things, how I'm going to react to some certain things, where I'm going to go, how I'm going to start doing what I need to be doing, how I'm going to start gathering disciples that are actually willing to do things and work, rather than just people that believe, you know what I mean? Because it's not only going to be on the internet. I'll probably build a way bigger grassroots movement on the streets than I ever would on the internet for what I'm doing. And probably a combination would... Yeah. Napoleon describes the imagination form of chemistry. He was a Mason as well. Yeah. Well, the imagination is everything. The imagination is more important than science. Because the imagination originally created the science. You see, sometimes people see science as only a description of things that are there. But really, the science is all they emerge from the imagination, right? So even in the beginning, you have God and his imagination. And God's imagination starts manifesting and creating all of the things, right, that are in your external environment, but it doesn't do that before everything is very well planned out and very well thought out, right? So everything that you've ever experienced, every moment that's experienced has been unbelievably well thought out, sequenced, and planned. And when you realize that everything around you is intricate and beautiful just the way that it is, it opens up space for you, right, to be more accepting of the situation that you are in your life, because all of a sudden everything you see is beautiful. Like I was saying to one of my friends, again, this is somebody that in the past, at least, they had some struggles with personality disorders, right? And I was just talking to them today, and it was like, well, did this thing happen or did that thing happen? This is what most people experience. It's like duality. And people usually don't consider that both can actually happen. And so my answer would be, if a person has multiple personalities, I actually think this person a lot of times is living in 5 dimensions at the same time and has part of their brain moving in and out of the other. And in each dimension, they're experiencing something different. Especially if they get really scared, a person with a alternative dimension, a person with a personality disorder can really move dimensional energy around really, really a lot. And they can delete things from reality very quickly too. And their power to do that is way beyond what anybody thinks, I'm telling you. Right? Because we perceive the universe to be a certain way, but just because we think it's that way doesn't mean it's so. You say, well, everybody sees that apple over there. Okay, then maybe that apple is there. And maybe it's there because we're all imagining it to be there, but if we weren't there, would the apple be? Anyways, I appreciate you. Hope this helped clear up that situation. And this is a little bit of a rant that got on and off subject because I'm a little bit tired and stuff like that. I've been having a hard couple of days. So, appreciate all the prayers and all the connections for everybody, who've been worried about me or whatever. I appreciate you very much. And I'm thankful for you. Ciao.